Ethan Graves wiped the sweat off his forehead as he tossed another pile of scrap into his truck. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the junkyard in shades of orange and gold. It was another long day, another load of rusted metal and forgotten machines. He had been working as a garbage man for years, cleaning up what others left behind. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it paid the bills, most of the time. The world had changed, and people barely noticed men like him anymore. Ethan sighed and leaned against his truck, taking a sip from his dented water bottle. His boots were covered in dust, his gloves stained with oil and grime. He had seen all kinds of junk in this place. Broken robots, shattered screens, abandoned cars. But something about today felt different. As he turned to pick up another heap of metal, something caught his eye. A small rusted device, half buried beneath old engine parts. It didn't look like any ordinary junk. Its surface was dented and worn, yet the shape was strange, almost alien. Curious, Ethan crouched down and pulled it free. The device was box-shaped, about the size of a book, with a faded screen on one side and buttons covered in symbols he didn't recognize. Rust had eaten away at its edges, but beneath the grime, the metal still felt cold and smooth, unlike anything he had touched before. "What are you?" he muttered. He pressed one of the buttons. Nothing happened. He tried another. Still nothing. Maybe it was just another useless piece of scrap. Or maybe it was something else. A small thrill of curiosity ran through him. Ethan wasn't the type to believe in strange things, but this felt like it had a story behind it. He glanced around. No one was watching. With a shrug, he stuffed the device into his bag and finished loading the truck. A voice in the dark. Later that night, Ethan sat in his tiny apartment, the rusted device resting on his workbench. He had cleaned off most of the dirt, revealing strange markings along the edges. The symbols weren't in any human language. He tapped it again, trying to figure out how it worked. He wasn't a scientist, just a guy who picked up trash, but he had always been good at fixing things. Then, a faint glow. The screen flickered to life. Static filled the air, crackling softly. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as a weak, distorted voice whispered through the speaker. "Please, help me." Ethan's fingers froze. His heart pounded in his chest. "Hello," he said, not expecting an answer. The static crackled again. The voice was soft, scared, and distant, like a child lost in a storm. "Don't know where I am. Please, someone, anyone." Ethan swallowed hard. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just some broken radio. "Who are you?" he asked. Silence. Then, after a few seconds, the voice returned. I don't know." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. He had found a lot of strange things in the junkyard, but never a talking machine. And the voice, it didn't sound human. "Where are you?" He tried again. "Lost," the voice whispered. "I am. Lost." The way she spoke, it was almost human, but not quite. There was something different in the tone, in the way the words came out. Ethan ran a hand through his short, messy hair. This was crazy. He should just turn it off and forget about it. But something about the voice, the fear in it, made him hesitate. "What's your name?" he asked. Silence again. Then, softly, "Kelly." Ethan took a deep breath. He didn't know who or what Kaylee was, but one thing was clear. She was real, and she needed help. The Watchers. Ethan spent the next hour trying to talk to Kaylee, but she didn't remember much. She didn't know where she came from or why she was inside the transmitter. The only thing she knew was that something was wrong. "The Dark Ones are coming," she whispered. "They are looking for me." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had no idea what that meant, but it didn't sound good. Then, a noise outside. A low hum filled the air, like the sound of a machine powering up. Ethan turned toward the window. Across the street, the lights flickered. The air felt heavy, charged with something he couldn't explain. And then, a shadow moved in the alley. Ethan's grip tightened on the transmitter. Someone was out there. Someone was looking for her. And now, they had found him too. Ethan's heart pounded as he stepped away from the window. The street outside was quiet, but he could feel it. Something was watching him. The rusty transmitter in his hands hummed softly, the glow on its screen flickering. Kelly's voice returned, weak but urgent. "They are near," she whispered. Ethan swallowed hard. Who? Who is near? "The ones, looking for me." A chill ran down his spine. He had found this thing in the junkyard just hours ago, and now someone, or something, was already after it. His instincts screamed at him to get rid of it, throw it away, forget about it. But there was something about Kelly's voice, something afraid, something lost. And Ethan had never been the kind of man to walk away from someone who needed help. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed his backpack, stuffed the transmitter inside, and slung it over his shoulder. If someone was coming, he wasn't going to wait for them. The chase begins. Ethan left his apartment and slipped into the dark alley behind his building. The city streets were mostly empty at this hour. Streetlights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows. He moved fast, keeping to the side streets, his boots silent against the pavement. The transmitter remained quiet in his bag, but he could still feel its presence, like carrying something dangerous, something important. Then, footsteps. Ethan stopped, listened. A soft clicking sound echoed down the alley. Not normal footsteps. Too light, too precise. He pressed himself against a wall, barely breathing. A figure moved in the distance, tall, covered in black armor, its helmet reflecting the dim light. Ethan clenched his fists. This wasn't just some random thug. This was something else, and it was looking for him. "Kelly," he whispered. "Who are these people?" Static crackled in his ear, then her voice, trembling. "The Varric." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Who are they?" "The ones who destroyed my people," she said. "The ones who want me dead." A sharp chill ran through Ethan's body. He wasn't dealing with some street gang. He was being hunted by something far worse. The figure in black moved closer. Ethan had seconds to decide. Then he ran. Escape into the night. Ethan sprinted through the alley, his breath sharp and fast. Behind him, the figure reacted instantly, moving with inhuman speed. A blue flash shot past him, hitting the brick wall beside him. Not a bullet. Something else. Ethan cursed under his breath. They weren't just chasing him. They were trying to take him down. He pushed harder, turning corners, weaving through abandoned streets. The city was quiet, but he knew it wouldn't be for long. Then, a dead end. A tall chain-link fence stood before him. No way around it. No way back. Ethan turned. The figure stood at the entrance of the alley, watching him. Silent, unmoving. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, in a voice distorted by its helmet, the figure said, "Give us the device." Ethan's grip tightened on his backpack. "And if I don't?" A second figure appeared beside the first. Then a third. They had him surrounded. Kelly's voice whispered in his ear. "Run, Ethan." "No kidding," he muttered. He turned and grabbed the fence. His muscles burned as he pulled himself up, fingers slipping against the metal. A blue flash streaked past him again, barely missing his leg. His heart pounded as he climbed over, swinging his legs to the other side. He hit the ground hard, rolling onto the pavement. No time to stop. No time to think. He ran. The safe house. Ethan didn't stop until he was far from the alley. His lungs burned, but he forced himself forward, turning onto an old street lined with abandoned buildings. There was one place he could go, a place no one else knew about. An old mechanic's garage. The building had been abandoned for years, but Ethan still had a key. He had used it as a hideout before, when things got bad, when he needed to disappear. Now, it was the only place that might keep him alive. He reached the garage and slipped inside, locking the door behind him. The space smelled of oil and rust, dust floating in the dim light. He collapsed onto an old workbench, breathing heavily. "Okay," he muttered. "Now what?" The transmitter crackled. Kelly's voice was stronger now. "You need to leave the city." Ethan frowned. "Leave and go where?" "To the stars," she said. Ethan let out a short, breathless laugh. "Lady, I'm a garbage man. I don't exactly have a spaceship lying around." But Kaylee wasn't joking. "There is something buried beneath your city," she said. "Something ancient. Something forgotten." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" A pause. Then, "A ship." Ethan's blood ran cold. Before he could ask anything else, a loud bang echoed through the garage. They had found him. And this time, there was nowhere left to run. The garage door shook violently. Someone, or something, was trying to break in. Ethan's breath hitched as he grabbed the rusty transmitter from his bag. His mind raced. "They found me," he whispered. Kelly's voice crackled through the speaker. "You need to get out. Now." Ethan spun around, looking for an escape. There was only one way out, the back door. But it was locked tight, rust sealing it shut. Another loud bang. The metal door dented inward. Whatever was on the other side wasn't human. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. He grabbed a nearby wrench, his fingers tightening around the cold steel. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. He took a deep breath and braced himself. If they got in, he would fight. Then, silence. The banging stopped. The air grew thick, heavy with an unnatural stillness. Ethan stayed frozen, his knuckles white around the wrench. Then, a low humming noise. It came from above, outside, somewhere in the sky. The same hum he had heard before. Ethan moved toward the window and carefully peeked outside. His breath caught in his throat. Hovering above the street was a black, triangular ship, its surface smooth and reflective. No visible engines, no flashing lights, just a dark presence against the night sky. Ethan's hands went clammy. "That's them, isn't it?" he whispered. Kelly's voice was urgent. "Yes." The Varric. The ship hovered for a few seconds, scanning the area. Then, without a sound, it slowly drifted away, disappearing into the clouds. Ethan let out a shaky breath. "They're leaving." "No," Kaylee said. "They think you're still here. They are setting a trap." Ethan swallowed hard. He needed to move. A desperate escape. Ethan turned back to the locked rear door. There was no time to find another way out. He grabbed a metal pipe from the workbench and swung it against the rusted hinges. Bang. The metal groaned but held firm. Bang. Bang. On the third hit, the hinges snapped and the door flew open. Fresh air rushed in. Without hesitating, Ethan bolted outside. The alley behind the garage was dark, the city lights flickering in the distance. He kept to the shadows, moving fast. Kelly's voice whispered in his ear, "Go east. Follow the old tunnels." Ethan frowned. Tunnels? What tunnels? Then he remembered. Years ago, before the city was rebuilt, there had been an underground system, old train tunnels, long abandoned. If he could reach them, he could disappear. He sprinted through the back streets, his heart hammering. Above, the black ship glided silently across the sky. It was searching, hunting. Ethan ran faster. Into the depths. He reached the old tunnel entrance, a rusted metal gate, half buried in dirt and overgrown vines. Come on," he muttered, yanking at the bars. It wouldn't budge. Behind him, he heard footsteps. The Varric were coming. Panic surged through his chest. He grabbed a nearby metal rod and jammed it into the gate's lock, twisting hard. With a loud snap, the lock broke. The gate creaked open just as a shadow moved behind him. Ethan threw himself inside, pulling the gate shut. A second later, something slammed against the bars from the outside. Ethan stumbled back, heart racing. Through the gaps, he saw them. Tall, armored figures, their helmets gleaming under the dim streetlights. One of them spoke, a deep, metallic voice. "You cannot run forever." Ethan didn't stick around to argue. He turned and rushed into the darkness. The hidden past. The tunnels were cold and silent, stretching endlessly beneath the city. Dust floated in the air, disturbed by his footsteps. His flashlight flickered as he walked. The deeper he went, the older the tunnels seemed. Strange markings covered the walls, symbols he didn't recognize. Kelly's voice broke the silence. "You're close." Ethan frowned. "Close to what?" "To the truth," she said. Then suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled. A deep rumbling sound echoed through the tunnel. Ethan froze. What was that? "The ship," Kaylee said. "It's waking up." Ethan's stomach twisted. Ship. Before he could ask, the tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. And there, covered in dust and time, was something that should not exist. A ship. Not like the ones the Varric used. This was different. Larger. Older. Its surface was covered in strange, glowing symbols. It looked like it had been buried for centuries. Ethan stepped closer, heart pounding. "This was under my city this whole time." "Yes," Kaylee whispered. "It is human." Ethan's blood ran cold. A human ship. Kaylee's voice was barely audible now, almost reverent. "This was humanity's first warship," she said. "Built long ago, built to fight the Varric." Ethan stared at the massive structure, realization dawning in his mind. This wasn't just an escape. This was a weapon, a forgotten piece of history. And now, it was his only chance to survive. Above ground, the Varric were closing in. And soon, the battle for Earth would begin. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the massive ancient ship before him. The underground chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in darkness. Dust and age covered the warship's metallic hull, but the faint glow of strange symbols pulsed along its surface. Kelly's voice was soft, almost in awe. "This ship, it was built for war, built to protect your world." Ethan stepped closer, running his fingers along the cold metal. "Then why was it buried?" A pause. Then, sadness in her voice. "Because humanity lost." Ethan felt a chill. Lost? Lost what? The First War. He swallowed hard. He had always thought humans were alone in the universe, that Earth was untouched by any great conflict beyond its own history. But this ship told another story. A deep rumbling sound shook the ground beneath his feet. Ethan's heart jumped. "Ah, Kelly," he said. "What's happening?" Kelly's voice turned sharp. "You activated it." Ethan's eyes widened. "What? I didn't do anything." "You touched the hull," she said. "And the ship recognized you. The warship wakes." Suddenly, the symbols on the ship's surface glowed brighter. A deep humming sound filled the chamber, like a beast waking from a long sleep. Ethan stepped back as the ground trembled again. The dust covering the ship began to fall away, revealing the dark, smooth metal beneath. Then, a voice. Not Kaylee's, not his. A deep mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "Human DNA detected. Command status. Verified." Ethan's breath caught. "What the hell does that mean?" Kaylee sounded stunned. "It means this ship belongs to you now." Ethan's mind reeled. He was just a garbage man. He had no idea how to fly a spaceship, let alone a warship. The humming grew louder. Lights flickered on across the ship's hull, revealing turrets, thrusters, and massive energy cannons that had been hidden beneath layers of dust. Then, a loud explosion from above. Ethan spun toward the tunnel entrance. The Varric were here. The enemy arrives. A sharp, metallic clang echoed through the tunnels. Then another. Heavy footsteps. Ethan's heart pounded. He could hear them, coming closer. Kelly's voice turned urgent. "Ethan, you have to get inside the ship. Now." Ethan turned back to the warship, eyes darting across its surface. There had to be an entrance. A door, a ramp, something. Then, as if sensing his thoughts, part of the hull shifted. A hidden hatch slid open, revealing a dark passage leading inside. Ethan didn't hesitate. He ran up the ramp, entering the ship just as the first Varric soldier appeared in the chamber. They were tall, armored, with sleek black helmets and glowing red visors. Their movements were precise, calculating. One of them raised a weapon, a long rifle-like device glowing with blue energy. They were going to shoot. Ethan slammed his fist against the nearest control panel. The ramp snapped shut just as a blue energy blast struck the hull. The sound echoed through the ship, but the metal held strong. Ethan let out a breath. That was close. Kelly's voice cut in. "You're not safe yet. You need to power up the ship's defenses." Ethan looked around. He was standing in a dark corridor, lined with control panels and flickering lights. "I have no idea how to do that," he said. "You don't have to," Kaylee said. "The ship is waking up. It remembers its purpose." Ethan ran deeper inside. The walls of the ship seemed to shift, guiding him toward what looked like the control room. As soon as he entered, the lights brightened. A large holographic screen flickered to life, displaying red warning signs. Outside, the Varric were moving fast. More of them had entered the chamber, circling the ship like wolves. Ethan's hands trembled as he looked at the control panel. There were too many buttons, too many switches. Then, the deep voice returned. Command accepted. Weapons online. Ethan barely had time to react before the ship fired. The first shot. Outside, the Varric soldiers barely had time to move before energy turrets unfolded from the ship's surface. Boom! A powerful blast shook the entire chamber, sending some of the Varric flying backward. The air crackled with energy, dust, and debris scattering. Ethan gripped the console as the ship powered up fully, its engines roaring to life. Kelly's voice was steady now. "Ethan, this ship was meant to fight them. And now, it's yours." Outside, the Varric regrouped, their weapons glowing as they prepared to fire back. Ethan stared at the screen. His mind raced. He had spent his life digging through trash. He was no soldier, no hero. But now, he had a warship, and the Varric wanted him dead. He clenched his fists. Not today. He turned to the controls and spoke 2 words. "Let's fight." The ship responded instantly. The engines roared, and for the first time in centuries, the forgotten warship of humanity rose from the ground. For the first time, the warship was in the open sky. Below, the city stretched out in every direction. Neon lights flickered in the night, and the streets were filled with people staring in shock as a massive forgotten warship rose into the heavens. Above, the Varric's black triangular ships hovered, waiting. And now, they saw him. The space battle begins. Alarms blared in the warship as Varric fighters locked onto him. Ethan's screen flashed red. Enemy units detected. Engaging defense mode. Kelly's voice was sharp. "Ethan, they're going to attack." Ethan barely had time to react before the Varric ships opened fire. Bright blue energy beams cut through the sky, racing toward him. The warship moved on its own, dodging the first barrage with surprising speed. Ethan's hands gripped the controls tightly, his mind spinning. He was in a real space battle. Kelly's voice guided him. "Use the ship's weapons. You have the advantage." Ethan's fingers hovered over the controls. Then, his instincts took over. He pressed a glowing red button. Boom! The warship fired a massive energy pulse, striking one of the Varric ships dead center. The enemy vessel exploded, flames lighting up the sky. Ethan let out a shaky breath. That worked. But there were more. 3 Varric ships swooped in, surrounding him. Ethan's ship twisted sharply, evading their attacks. But they were fast. Kelly's voice was urgent. "They're trying to trap you." Ethan's eyes darted to the control panel. Think, think. Then he saw it. A symbol glowing brighter than the others. He didn't know what it did, but something told him to press it. He slammed his hand down. The ultimate weapon. The ship stopped moving. For a moment, the sky was silent. Then, a pulse of energy erupted from the warship's core, spreading outward in a shockwave. The Varric ships had no time to escape. The blast ripped through them, disabling their engines. Sparks exploded across their surfaces as their controls short-circuited. The remaining Varric ships spiraled out of control, crashing down toward the city. Ethan stared in shock. Kelly's voice was calm but firm. That was the warship's true power. Ethan let out a slow breath. He had just taken down an entire fleet, but he knew the fight wasn't over. The Varric mothership was still out there. And now, they knew he was a threat. Ethan clenched his fists. He was no longer just a garbage man. He was humanity's last chance, and he was ready to fight. Ethan sat in the warship's command chair, breathing hard. The battle was over. For now, the Varric fighter ships had been destroyed, their burning wreckage scattered across the city below. But Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Above him, the Varric mothership loomed like a shadow, its massive form blocking out the stars. It was waiting, watching. Kelly's voice was tense. They're not attacking. Ethan frowned. Why not? They know I have this ship now. Maybe they're afraid. Ethan almost laughed. The Varric, afraid? That seemed impossible. They had invaded planets, wiped out civilizations. They had won the first war against humanity. But now, the ancient warship was awake, and Ethan had proven it was still dangerous. A deep voice echoed through the ship's speakers, cold, commanding. The Varric leader was speaking. Human, you do not understand what you have awakened. Ethan's jaw tightened. Yeah. Then why don't you come down here and explain it to me? A pause. Then, a warning. That ship is a relic of a war that should never have been fought. If you continue this path, you will share the fate of those who came before you. Kelly's voice turned sharp. He's trying to scare you. Ethan narrowed his eyes at the mothership, his grip tightening on the controls. Yeah, well, I don't scare easy. But deep inside, a small doubt gnawed at him. What did the Varric leader mean? What really happened in the First War? The warship's systems flickered. A hidden memory was unlocking. And suddenly, Ethan saw the past. Memories of the First War. A holographic projection filled the air before him. He saw Earth, but not as he knew it. The cities were taller, brighter, more advanced. Massive space stations floated in orbit. Humanity had been strong, united. And then, the Varric arrived. Flashes of war filled the hologram. Human warships clashed with the Varric fleet. Explosions tore through space, battles raging across planets and moons. Ethan's breath caught. Humanity had fought back. Hard. And for a time, they had won. Then, the betrayal. The scene shifted. A group of humans stood before the Varric. Leaders, scientists, generals. One of them handed over a code that disabled all human warships. The war turned in an instant. The Varric crushed the last human fleets. Earth's defenses fell. The survivors, the ones who refused to surrender, hid their greatest weapon. The warship Ethan now controlled. And then, the memory ended. Ethan stared at the empty air, his heart pounding. Kelly's voice was barely a whisper. That's why the ship was buried. They betrayed their own people, Ethan said, his voice low. The Varric leader's voice returned. You understand now. Your kind cannot be trusted with power. Surrender the warship. It will be your only chance for survival. Ethan clenched his fists. He had seen enough. He wasn't going to surrender. The decision. Ethan took a deep breath and turned to Kaylee. Can we fight them? Kaylee hesitated. The warship is powerful, but it's still damage. If the Varric mothership attacks now, we won't last long. Ethan nodded, thinking fast. If he couldn't win, he had to outsmart them. He opened a direct communication link to the Varric leader. His voice was steady, firm. I'm not giving you the ship. A pause. Then, amusement. Then you will die. Ethan smirked. Maybe. But if you attack me, the whole planet will see it. Right now, people are watching. They saw your ships explode in the sky. They know I'm fighting back. He leaned forward. So go ahead. Attack. But when you do, humanity will know the truth, and they'll fight back, just like before. Silence. The Varric leader didn't reply. Kaylee whispered, Ethan, I think it's working. Then, the mothership began to move. Ethan tensed, ready for battle. But the Varric ship did not fire. Instead, it slowly turned away. Ethan's eyes widened. They're leaving. Kaylee exhaled, sounding stunned. You called their bluff. On the screen, the Varric leader spoke once more. You are reckless, but not foolish. This war is not over, human. The mothership vanished into the sky. Ethan sat back, shaking. He had won, for now. But he knew the Varric would be back. And next time, they wouldn't hesitate. The war is coming. Kaylee's voice was quiet. Ethan, you just became the biggest threat to the Varric Empire. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, lucky me. The Varric mothership had vanished into the sky. But Ethan knew this wasn't the end. He had won a battle, but the war was coming. He stood at the warship's command console, staring at the holographic map displaying Earth's orbit. The Varric fleet had retreated, for now, but they weren't gone. Kelly's voice was quiet. They'll return. Stronger. Ethan nodded. And we need to be ready. The warship's systems were still damaged from the centuries it had spent buried underground. If Ethan wanted to stand a chance against the full force of the Varric Empire, he had to fix the ship and find allies. And he had an idea where to start. A call for help. Ethan accessed the ship's communication system. It was old, forgotten technology, but powerful. If he could send a message across the planet, maybe, just maybe, others would join him. Kaylee looked at him. What are you thinking? Ethan smirked. It's time to wake up humanity. He pressed a button, activating the planetary broadcast system. His voice echoed across the world. This is Ethan Walker. I know you saw what happened tonight. The Varric are real. They'd been ruling from the shadows for too long. He took a deep breath. But they're afraid. Because we have something they don't. The power to fight back. People across the world watched their screens. They had seen the Varric ships explode. They had witnessed the ancient warship rise from the ground. And now, they had hope. Ethan clenched his fist. If you are listening, if you want to stand against them, find me. This isn't just my fight. It's ours. The transmission ended. Ethan exhaled, turning to Kelly. Now we wait. But they didn't have to wait long. The resistance rises. Hours later, the first ships arrived. Small, outdated fighter crafts. Old cargo freighters converted into makeshift warships. Groups of humans who had been hiding for years, waiting for a moment like this. Waiting for someone to fight back. One of the ships sent a message. A woman's voice crackled over the radio. Ethan Walker, you just started something big. Ethan grinned. Good, because we're gonna need all the help we can get. The resistance was born. But there was no time to celebrate. Because the Varric were already returning. The final battle begins. Alarms blared as Varric warships appeared in the sky. Their mothership had called for reinforcements. Dozens of enemy vessels now hovered over Earth, blocking out the stars. Kelly's face turned pale. They're not holding back this time. Ethan gritted his teeth. Neither are we. The resistance pilots took their positions. Their ships may have been smaller, weaker, but they had something the Varric didn't. They had heart. Ethan sat in the warship's command chair, gripping the controls. This was it. The Varric fleet opened fire. Beams of blue energy rained down, lighting up the night sky. Ethan's warship shook violently as enemy blasts struck its shield. Sparks flew, but the ancient vessel held strong. Ethan's fingers flew over the controls. He activated the primary cannons, and the ship fired back. Boom! A massive energy pulse tore through the sky, striking a Varric cruiser. The enemy ship exploded, breaking apart in flames. The battle had begun. The warship's true power. The fight raged on. Resistance pilots dodged and weaved through enemy fire, their small ships outmaneuvering the larger Varric vessels. But the Varric were relentless. More enemy ships arrived, surrounding Ethan's warship. Kelly's voice was urgent. "We can't hold them off forever." Ethan scanned the control panel. The ship had one last secret, a final weapon. But using it came with a cost. Kelly's voice softened. "Ethan, if you activate this, the ship might not survive." Ethan looked at the battle raging around him. If he didn't do this, Earth wouldn't survive. He placed his hand on the console. "Then let's make it count." He pressed the final glowing symbol. The end of the battle. The warship shuddered, and a deep hum filled the air. The energy core was activating. Outside, the sky turned gold. A massive shockwave erupted from the warship, spreading outward in a blinding flash of light. The Varric ships didn't stand a chance. Their systems overloaded, their weapons shut down. Some vessels exploded instantly, while others crashed to the ground, their engines failing. The mothership tried to escape, but the energy caught it. A final, deafening explosion lit up the sky. Then, silence. The battle was over. A new beginning. Ethan sat in the warship's smoking interior, breathing hard. The ship was damaged, nearly destroyed, but it had done its job. Kelly's voice was soft. "You did it." Ethan looked at the sky, now clear and bright. The Varric fleet was gone. But he knew this wasn't the end of the war. The Varric Empire was vast, stretching across the stars. They would send more ships, more armies. But this time, humanity was ready. Ethan activated the ship's navigation system. He wasn't going to wait for the next invasion. It was time to take the fight to them. He turned to Kaylee and grinned. "Let's go hunt some Varric." The ancient warship rose into the sky, heading toward the stars. The fight had just begun. He looked out at the night sky, where the Varric mothership had disappeared. Humanity had been betrayed before. They had lost the first war. But this time, things were different. Because now, they had him. Ethan was ready to fight.